"Daddy, she looks like Mommy." The little girl pointed at the bride, freezing the widowed rancher. Montana Territory, winter of 1883, Bitter Creek Station. The snow came down heavy that morning, blanketing the tracks and the roofs of the sleepy outpost town. Bitter Creek Station was little more than a whistle stop in the middle of the Montana wilderness. A wooden platform, a one-room telegraph office, and the sound of nothing but wind. The train hissed to a halt, its steam swallowed by the cold. Clarabelle Hawthorne stepped off the final passenger car, clutching her gloved hands around a worn leather suitcase. Her wedding dress, once white, had dulled to ivory during the long journey west. Layers of tulle peeked out beneath her heavy coat, and the lace collar chafed at her throat. She had sewn it herself by candlelight in Virginia, imagining the day he would see her. She stood straight despite the biting wind, eyes scanning every man on the platform. A ranch hand unloading crates, a conductor lighting his pipe, two boys racing down the road, but not him. Not Levi Ransom. He had written 37 letters, promised a small chapel wedding by Christmas, a life on his sprawling land. "You will love it here," he wrote in one. "The wild is not so wild when you are beside me." Clara waited. 10 minutes, then 20. A man in a long brown coat approached her with hesitant steps. He held his hat against the wind. "Ma'am," he said gently, "are you Miss Clara Hawthorne?" "Yes," she said, clutching her suitcase tighter. Her voice trembled, but she held it firm. He looked down. "Levi, he ain't comin'. I'm sorry, miss, but he married a local gal last week. Pastor Calhoun did the service, real quiet like." Clara blinked once. "I do not understand." "I reckon he changed his mind. Folks say his pa was pushing for him to marry within the valley." Her breath caught, forming frost in the air. "But he wrote me. Just last month, he wrote me." "I believe you, ma'am." The man's face turned red. "If you need a place to warm up, the postmaster's got a stove." She did not reply, just nodded faintly and turned her face away. The man tipped his hat and left her there, standing alone as the train screeched and groaned, then pulled away into the whiteness. The wind cut sharp. Clara stepped off the platform, heels sinking into fresh snow. She found a wooden bench beside the station wall and sat down. Her suitcase landed with a soft thud. She pulled her coat tighter, but the cold had already settled into her bones. She looked down at her lap, where a piece of white cloth peeked from inside the case. A delicate handkerchief, embroidered with the initials L.R. She had stitched it on the night he proposed by letter. It still carried the faint scent of lavender. Her hands trembled as she held it, the weight of abandonment pressing down on her chest until she could barely breathe. The tears came without warning, silent at first, then sobs that racked her shoulders. She buried her face in the crook of her arm, her wedding veil catching the snow as it slid from her hair. The world was white and empty. Then came the sound of hoofbeats. A black wagon pulled by two bay horses rolled down the main street, its wheels muffled by snow. A man in a long wool coat and wide-brimmed hat sat at the reins, his face carved in solemn lines. Beside him, bundled in furs, sat a little girl no older than 3. She leaned forward, her mittened hand pointing toward the figure curled on the bench. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging at his sleeve. "Daddy, she looks like Mommy." The man slowed the horses. His eyes followed the child's hand, and when he saw the woman in white, his breath caught, not because of her beauty, but because of something else, something buried and aching. Clara did not see them. She could not. Her face was in her hands, her soul unraveling like loose thread. But the child would not look away. "She's crying," the girl said softly. "Is she sad like you were?" The man said nothing. The wagon came to a halt. Snow swirled around them, the wind moaning like ghosts across the prairie, and for one suspended moment, time did not move. Only hearts did. Elijah Carter rarely stopped his wagon for anything. There was too much land to manage, too many hands to pay, and too little room in a man's heart for what the world called sentiment. But the sight of the woman on the bench, changed something. He did not know her. She was just a shape at first. A figure folded in white like winter itself, hunched against the wall of the station. But then, Lily pointed, and when Elijah looked, really looked, the cold did not feel quite so biting anymore. Her shoulders were trembling, her veil was frozen, stiff at the ends, and the way she held that handkerchief in both hands, like it was all she had left, stirred something he had buried long ago. He pulled the reins. The horses came to a gentle stop. "Stay in the wagon, Lily," he said quietly. The girl nodded, her big brown eyes still fixed on the woman. Elijah stepped down into the snow, boots crunching against the crusted path. He crossed the platform with the weight of a man who had not made a spontaneous decision in 3 years. Each step forward felt heavier than the last. The woman did not notice him until his shadow fell across her. "You all right, miss?" he asked, voice rough from disuse. She looked up. For one breathless second, he forgot how to stand. Her face was flushed red from the cold, tears frozen to her cheeks, her eyes, blue, soft, rimmed with desperation, met his, and Elijah's world staggered beneath him. She looked like her. Not exactly. His late wife had darker hair, fuller lips, but the ache in those eyes. It was the same. The same as when Sarah had whispered her last breath in the birthing bed, holding Elijah's hand as their daughter cried into the dawn. The woman blinked, startled. I. Elijah pulled off his wool coat and, without asking, draped it over her shoulders. It was far too big. The sleeves hung past her hands. She flinched, then looked up again. "I don't need." "You're freezing," he said, gentler this time. "No one should be out here dressed like this." The woman clutched the coat tighter. "He was supposed to come," he said. "He promised." Her voice cracked. Elijah's jaw tightened. "Someone left you waitin'?" She nodded, eyes wide with shame. "We wrote letters for over a year. He said he'd be here." She swallowed, then whispered, "But he's married now." Elijah exhaled, slow and deep. The wind moaned through the station boards. The woman laughed, once, with dry, bitter. "I traveled all this way in a wedding dress, like some fool." "You're not a fool," Elijah said. The words surprised even him. Her eyes filled again, brimmed with something too broken to name. Her lips parted, and her voice came out a ragged breath. "I have nowhere else to go." There it was. The words hit him like a hammer to the chest. The same words Sarah had once said when he brought her to this land, when the prairie frightened her and she cried under the cottonwoods. "I have nowhere else to go." He crouched slowly, bringing himself eye level with the woman. Clara, though he did not know her name yet, his voice, when it came, was low and steady. "There's a warm fire at my place. A child who won't stop asking about you, and a room you can use until you figure things out." She stared at him in disbelief. "I'm not offering charity," he added. "I just don't believe in leaving folks to freeze to death." Clara's lips trembled. Her hand clenched the handkerchief again. "Elijah Carter," he said, offering a gloved hand. She looked at it, hesitated, then took it. "Clara," she whispered. Behind them, the snow kept falling, and in the wagon, Lily pressed her nose to the glass, watching the moment with a knowing gaze no child her age should carry. As Elijah helped Clara to her feet, the world felt different, not healed, not whole, but no longer hollow. The house was quiet when they arrived, save for the groan of wind against the shutters. Elijah said little as he helped Clara down from the wagon. He did not introduce her to the ranch hands or explain her presence. He simply led her through the front door, past a long hallway with creaking floors, and opened a modest guest room with a single bed, a wash basin, and a window frosted at the corners. "You can rest here," he said, then turned and left without waiting for a reply. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, the coat he had given her still wrapped around her shoulders. She pressed her hands into her lap, unsure if she was a guest or an obligation. It did not take long for Lily to find her. The child peeked around the doorframe with wide eyes and bare feet. "Hi," she said, not shy in the least. Clara smiled gently. "Hello. Are you going to live here now?" I do not know." Lily stepped inside, dragging a small cloth doll by its arm. She climbed up beside Clara without invitation and nestled against her side like it was the most natural thing in the world. That night, Clara stitched the tear in Lily's sleeve with thread from her travel case. She did not ask permission. She simply noticed it and mended it. She also found the pantry, boiled potatoes, and added herbs and spice she had packed from home, flavors the West did not yet know. She left a steaming bowl on the kitchen table, but Elijah did not come down for supper. Days passed like that. Clara never overstepped, but her presence began to fill the empty corners of the house. A song hummed in the hall, a pot of tea left warm by the stove. She never asked for anything in return. Lily followed her constantly. To the barn, to the stream, to the quiet grove behind the house, where wildflowers stubbornly clung to life beneath the frost. Elijah watched it all from a distance. He spoke little, he answered only when asked, but every time he caught Clara lifting Lily in her arms or kneeling to tie the child's boot, something deep inside him pulled tight. It was not longing, not yet. It was ache. A familiar one he had spent years burying. He told himself she would leave. He reminded himself that kindness was not affection. Then, Lily fell ill. It started with a cough, then a fever that would not break. The ranch hands spoke of an early frost, of children catching the sickness that moved in winter's shadow. Elijah sent for the doctor, but Bitter Creek's only physician was days away. Clara stayed by Lily's side from the moment she saw her pale. She dampened cloths, boiled water, cooled the child's burning cheeks. She hummed softly, old songs, lullabies with lilting melody and Eastern drawl. Her voice cracked when she tried to remember the words, but the rhythm held. That night, Elijah stood in the hallway outside Lily's door. He had not slept. His hands were clenched at his sides, but he could not go in. Through the crack in the door, he saw Clara seated at the edge of the bed. Her hair had fallen loose. She rocked gently, cradling Lily in her arms, whispering something he had not heard in years. "Oh, Shenandoah, I long to hear you." It was Sarah's lullaby, the very same she used to sing while brushing Lily's hair, back when she was still alive. Elijah's throat tightened. He leaned against the wall, his eyes fixed on the soft rise and fall of his daughter's chest, the way Clara pressed her lips to the child's temple, murmuring comfort through the fever. In that moment, she did not look like a stranger. She looked like she belonged. And for the first time in years, Elijah wished someone would stay. The fever broke 2 days later. Lily opened her eyes to sunlight spilling through the curtains, her cheeks no longer flushed, her breathing steady. Clara was asleep in the chair beside her, hands still curled around a cool rag. Elijah had not left the hallway. He watched in silence, every part of him tethered to the quiet room, unable to step forward, but unable to look away. Later that afternoon, Clara went to unpack her suitcase fully for the first time. It still sat where she had dropped it weeks before, half under the guest bed, covered in dust and guilt. She pulled out her dresses, her wrapped sewing needles, her journal, and then, at the bottom, stuck between folded fabric, she found the letter. Its edges were crumpled from the journey, the ink slightly smudged. She unfolded it slowly, already sensing what she had forgotten. "Clara, I don't know if I can go through with this. Things have changed here. But come anyway, and we'll talk when you arrive. Levi." No promises, no welcome, just cowardice on paper. Her hands trembled. She had read his earlier letters so many times she had memorized their romantic rhythm. But this one she must have pushed down, ignored, too afraid to see the truth before boarding the train. She walked out to the porch, the letter clenched in her fist. Elijah was feeding the horses. He looked up as she approached, face unreadable. "I found it," she said. He didn't ask what she meant. He saw the letter, saw the way her eyes brimmed but didn't spill. He waited. Clara offered it to him. He took it, slowly. Read the few short lines, his brow furrowed. He knew, she said. He knew he wasn't going to meet me, and he still let me come. Elijah folded the letter again with deliberate care. He did not hand it back. I should have known better, Clara whispered, voice thin as frost. I believed every word. I left everything behind for a man who… She trailed off, unable to finish. Elijah's jaw tensed. He should be ashamed of himself. She looked at him, eyes searching. Why do you care? He looked past her, toward the field stretching into dusk. The moon was beginning to rise, low, golden, haunting. Because I've seen what it means to lose someone you love, he said, and I've seen what it looks like when a man doesn't deserve the woman who's standing in front of him. Clara's throat tightened. They stood in silence for a long moment, the porch creaking beneath them, the chill brushing through the rafters. Then Elijah spoke again, lower now. I don't know if I can love again, he said. I won't lie to you, my heart's been quiet a long time. Clara's voice cracked. So has mine. He turned to face her fully. The wind moved her hair. His coat, still around her shoulders, stirred like it remembered the moment he first placed it there. But I know this much, he said, steady as the earth beneath them. You don't deserve to be forgotten like this. Her eyes filled. I have nothing left, she whispered. No family, no name worth anything out here. I was supposed to be someone's wife by now, but instead I'm… She shook her head, voice unraveling. I am just a burden in someone else's house. No, he said firmly. She looked up, startled. You are not a burden, Elijah said. You are the only light this house has seen in 3 winters. The moon climbed higher, and in its pale glow, Clara saw a man not offering rescue, but something quieter, deeper. Understanding, respect, possibility. The snow lingered into early spring that year, refusing to let go. But inside the Carter ranch, something softer had begun to thaw. Clara no longer tiptoed through the halls. Her footsteps had found a rhythm, her voice a place in the silence. She rose before the sun, helped in the kitchen without being asked, and once a week she began reading lessons with Lily beside the hearth. Elbow starts with E, Clara would say, guiding the small finger across the page. Elbow, Lily repeated, beaming. Sometimes Elijah watched from the doorway, arms folded, pretending not to listen, but his eyes never left them. Clara had taken over the bookkeeping too. The ledgers were a mess. Elijah never had patience for numbers, and she reorganized them with quiet precision. Every column, every figure, clean and understood. You could have been a banker, he joked once. She smiled. I prefer the company of horses. They shared more moments like that. Small, fleeting, but real. One afternoon, Clara handed Elijah a scarf she had knitted for Lily's birthday. He held it in both hands, thumb brushing the delicate pattern. He did not speak, but the look in his eyes said enough. Another day, they worked side by side in the stables, stacking feed sacks. Their gloves brushed. Clara moved first, stepping away quickly, cheeks flushed. I'm sorry, she said under her breath. Elijah didn't reply. He just kept stacking. They were careful like that. 2 people who had lost too much to gamble on hope. Still, the land saw what they could not say. It was in the way Elijah left her a cup of tea by the porch after long days. In the way Clara mended the hem of his coat without telling him. In how he always made sure Lily kissed her goodnight. One evening, a storm rolled in. Clara was hauling firewood when the wind caught her skirt. Elijah appeared from nowhere, taking the bundle from her arms. You'll freeze, he said. I'm not made of porcelain. His mouth lifted slightly. You're stubborn, is what you are. And you're afraid, she said before she could stop herself. He paused. The wind howled between them. She lowered her eyes. I did not mean. Livehem.com plus, for starred my godand and saya, safely by their prax livigly at K's. You're right. He set the firewood down, stood beside her as the snow began to fall again. I am afraid. Of starting over. Of failing someone again. Clara hugged her arms. You think I am not? They didn't look at each other. Not then. But the silence between them was no longer cold, it was waiting. Still, when the morning came, they returned to their distance. Clara kept her hands busy, her heart guarded. She told herself she was just a guest, a woman who had come to marry someone else and failed. That whatever she felt when Elijah looked at her that way, it could not mean what she hoped it did. Elijah, too, kept his distance. He told himself it was safer, that Lily's laughter returning was enough, that he had already lost love once and survived. He would not tempt fate by falling again. But every night, he found himself standing outside Clara's door for a moment too long. And every morning, Clara waited for the sound of his boots across the floor. They lived like that. Close enough to feel, too far to touch, but the space between them was closing, inch by inch, like snow melting into spring. And the heart, for all its caution, cannot stay frozen forever. It was a Thursday when he came. The wind carried the dust of early spring across the pasture as a lone rider approached from the east. Clara was kneeling in the garden, coaxing the first stubborn greens to life, when she heard the hooves. She rose slowly, brushing her hands against her apron, heart tightening with a strange unease. The man dismounted without ceremony. "Clara," he said. She froze. Levi Ransom looked thinner now, his coat threadbare, eyes darting like a man who had run out of cards to play. His boots were cracked, his voice carried none of the certainty it once held in letters. She stepped back. "What are you doing here?" "I came for you," he said, glancing toward the house. "Heard you were living here, with his kid. You have no right to be here." "I do," he said. "You came for me once. Now I'm asking you to return the favor." Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. "You left me on that platform like I was nothing." "I made a mistake," he said quickly. "I shouldn't have married her. It fell apart, all right? I lost everything. I've got nothing left, except the chance to fix what I broke." "You did not break a promise," Clara said, her voice trembling. "You broke me." Levi stepped closer. "Look, I know this place isn't yours. And I know you didn't exactly tell that man the full truth. What happens when he finds out you came here to marry someone else?" Clara's breath caught. Levi leaned in. "We can go, Clara. Start again somewhere they don't know us. But if you don't, I might have to explain things to Mr. Carter myself." A sharp silence fell between them. Then a voice, low and cold. "You don't have to." Elijah stood a few feet away, his hat in his hand, his face shadowed with something far deeper than anger, betrayal. Clara turned to him, panic rising. "Elijah, I heard enough." Levi raised both hands in mock innocence. "I was just offering her what she came here for. Seems fair." Elijah's eyes didn't leave Clara. "Is that true?" Her mouth opened, but the words stuck. "I didn't mean to stay," she finally whispered. "But then, Lily, and you, I—" His jaw tightened. He stepped back. "I took you in because I believed in the kind of woman you were," he said. "Not someone who runs from one man to the next when the wind changes." Clara's eyes welled. "That's not who I am." "I don't know who you are," Elijah said quietly. "I thought I did." Without another word, he turned and walked away. Levi chuckled under his breath. "Guess I struck a nerve." "Levi." Clara spun on him, fury shaking her frame. "Get off this land, now." He shrugged and mounted his horse. "Offer still stands, Clara, but it won't last forever." She watched him ride off, the dust cloud trailing behind him like the ruin he always left behind. And when she turned back toward the house, it felt farther away than it ever had. Clara packed in silence. She folded each dress with care, her hands steady even as her heart frayed at the edges. The guest room had grown warm since she arrived. Once cold, now soft with the smell of pine wood, the rhythm of small footsteps in the hall, and the memory of a child's laughter echoing off the walls. But it was not hers. She had been a guest in a life she did not earn, and now the dream was ending, as quietly as it had begun. Elijah had not spoken to her since that morning. The distance between them had stretched impossibly wide. His eyes, once so steady, were now guarded. The way he walked past her, civil but cold, told her everything. He believed the worst. And no matter how much she wanted to fight for what they had begun to build, Clara knew when a door had been closed. She reached for her worn leather suitcase and placed the last item inside. Lily's drawing, a picture of the three of them beneath a crooked sundae. It had hung by the fireplace for weeks. She folded it gently and tucked it beside her journal. A small knock interrupted the quiet. Clara turned, the door creaked open, and Lily slipped in, still in her nightgown, clutching something in both hands. "Lily," Clara knelt, "you should be asleep, sweet girl." The child didn't answer. She walked forward slowly and held out a folded piece of paper, edges rumpled from being carried too tightly. Clara took it, unfolding it with trembling fingers. Inside, scrawled in crooked letters and backward E's, were 5 words. "Please stay, I want you to be my mommy." Clara's breath caught in her chest. Lily looked up, eyes wide and brimming. "I know you're leaving," she whispered, "but I don't want you to." Clara gathered the child into her arms, holding her close as the tears finally came. "Oh, Lily, sweetheart." They stayed like that, a quiet bundle on the floor, the paper still clutched in Clara's hand. Later, when Clara slipped out before dawn, trying not to wake anyone, she left Lily asleep in her bed, the letter tucked under the child's pillow. But the paper did not stay there. Elijah found it by accident while checking on his daughter, her blanket kicked to the floor in her sleep. He reached to cover her and saw the folded page, smoothed it out with calloused fingers. At first, he thought it was just a child's scribble, but then he read it. "Please stay. I want you to be my mommy." He sat down on the edge of Lily's bed and stared at the paper, the words burrowing deeper with every heartbeat. Clara had not been the mistake. She had not been the escape. She had been the woman who stayed up nursing his child through fever, who brought warmth back to a house that had grown cold, who never once asked for more than the space to be useful. And he had turned away from her. Not because she failed him, but because he had been afraid of needing someone again. But Lily wasn't afraid. Lily knew. Elijah rose, heart pounding, and moved through the house with sudden purpose. When he saw the guest room was empty, the bed made tight, he moved faster. At the front door, he threw on his coat and grabbed his gloves. Snow was falling again. He saddled his horse and rode hard, wind biting at his skin, the hooves tearing across frozen ground. He knew where she would go. There was only one place where the story had once ended. And if he was lucky, if the tracks were still warm, he could rewrite that ending, not with regret, but with something far braver. Love. The train let out a long, hollow cry. Metal wheels grinding against frozen rails, smoke coiling into the early light. Clara stood near the back of the platform, her suitcase by her feet, her gloves trembling slightly as she held her ticket. Her gaze stretched across the empty land beyond Bitter Creek, where snow still clung to the peaks like memory that refused to melt. This had been the place where she came to become someone's wife, the place where she had been abandoned, and then found, and now, perhaps, lost again. The station master called for final boarding. People bustled around her, mothers gathering their children, a soldier hugging his sweetheart, strangers making their own escapes. Clara did not move. She looked once more at the mountains in the distance, the silent ranch road she had memorized by heart. This land had taken her pride, then given her purpose. But what was she now? Just as she bent to lift her suitcase, a voice rang through the station, clear, unyielding. "Clara, don't go." She turned. Elijah stood in the snow, breathless, his coat dusted white from the ride. His eyes searched for hers beneath her bonnet, and in his arms, bundled in thick wool, was Lily. Wide awake, clutching something small in her mittened hands. Clara froze. Elijah stepped forward, his boots crunching over ice. "I should have never let you walk away," he said. "I was too proud, too scared. But Lily knew what I didn't. She knew you were already part of us." He nodded at the child, who reached out with a small velvet box. Clara took it with trembling fingers and opened it slowly. Inside was a ring, a simple, gold, a little worn. "It was my mother's," Elijah said. "She wore it every day for 32 years. I never thought I'd offer it to someone else." He stepped closer. "I won't promise I'll forget the past. I won't pretend I know how to start over without stumbling. But if you stay—" His voice caught, then steadied. "If you stay, I'll learn how to love you fully. As you are. Not because Lily needs a mother. Not because this house needs warmth. But because I do." Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks, unhidden this time. She looked at Lily, then at Elijah. Then she stepped down from the platform, leaving the ticket behind. The train screamed once more and pulled away behind her. But she did not look back. She crossed the distance between them, snow rising around her boots, and placed one gloved hand against Elijah's chest. "I stayed once for the wrong man," she whispered, "but this time, I'm choosing to stay, for me." Elijah pulled her in without a word, his arm wrapped around her waist, the other holding Lily between them. A family. Impossible, unexpected, but whole. They returned home together beneath a sky beginning to soften, where the snow seemed to fall slower now, gentler, somehow. Weeks passed. In the evenings, Clara sat by the hearth, Lily nestled beside her with books and letters. They practiced words one by one: love, home, belong. And through the open window, Elijah watched them from the fence line, hands resting on the top rail, his eyes no longer clouded by sorrow, but warmed by the quiet truth he had nearly missed. Love had not returned the way it once was. It had returned as something better, earned, chosen, and deeply, beautifully alive. And that is the story of how a forgotten bride, a grieving rancher, and a little girl's letter stitched together a family where none was expected. In the vast, unforgiving wilds of the West, love doesn't always arrive with a vow. Sometimes it shows up in a borrowed coat, a child's crooked handwriting, and the courage to stay when it's easier to leave. If this story touched your heart, even just a little, go ahead and smash that hype button, leave us a comment, and subscribe to Wild West Love Stories for more tales of love, loss, and the kind of connection that survives the storm. Because out here, bullets missed, but hearts didn't.